Folks, I never thought I'd be sitting here at 72 years old, telling you this story. But life has a funny way of teaching you that nothing, and I mean nothing, ever goes quite the way you plan it. My name is Margaret, though everyone calls me Maggie, and I've lived in the same little town in Ohio my whole life. The kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do, where the diner on Main Street still serves coffee for $1, and where winter hits so hard you can hear the house creak under the weight of the snow. This story starts 15 years ago, on a February night so cold the windows had ice on the inside. That was the night my son Danny showed up at my door with a bundle in his arms and desperation in his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "I need your help." The bundle was his 3-month-old son Ethan, and Danny, my 23-year-old boy who'd always been too trusting, too soft-hearted, was standing there with tears freezing on his cheeks, telling me that Ethan's mother, Jessica, had left. Just packed a bag and disappeared in the middle of the night, leaving nothing but a note that said she couldn't do this anymore. I didn't ask questions right then. I just opened my arms and my door, the way mothers do. Those first few months were harder than anything I'd done since raising my own kids. I was 57, working full-time at the county library, and suddenly I had a colicky baby who didn't sleep more than 2 hours at a stretch. Danny tried to help, but he was working double shifts at the automotive plant, trying to keep his head above water. I remember standing in my kitchen at 3 a.m, bouncing Ethan against my shoulder, watching the snow fall outside the window and thinking, "Lord, I already raised my children. I'm supposed to be enjoying my peace and quiet now." But then Ethan would look up at me with those big brown eyes, Danny's eyes, and something in my heart would just melt. My daughter Claire came by one Saturday morning that first winter. She found me in the living room, surrounded by baby bottles, burp cloths, and the remains of what used to be my organized life. "Mom," she said gently, setting down a casserole she'd brought, "you don't have to do this alone. We can figure something out. Maybe Danny needs to step up more, or—" "He's doing the best he can," I interrupted, maybe a little sharper than I meant to. "And this baby needs stability. He needs someone who's going to be here every single day." Claire looked at me for a long moment. "You're already attached, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The years that followed became the rhythm of my new life. First steps in my living room, holding onto the coffee table I'd had since 1985. First words, Gamma instead of Grandma, which stuck as his nickname for me forever. First day of kindergarten, where I stood with all the young mothers, feeling every one of my years but not caring one bit. We developed our routines, Ethan and me. Saturday mornings were for pancakes, my special recipe with a touch of cinnamon, the way I used to make them for Danny. We'd eat them at the kitchen table while watching cartoons, his little feet swinging because they didn't reach the floor, yet. Winter evenings were for hot chocolate and reading. I'd bundle him up in the quilt my own grandmother made, and we'd work through every book we could get from the library. By the time he was 7, he was reading to me. Summers meant the community pool, where I'd sit on the edge with my feet in the water, watching him play with the other kids. The young mothers would sometimes give me curious looks. Was I the grandma, the babysitter? I learned to hold my head high and not explain myself to anyone. Danny visited when he could, which became less frequent as the years went on. He got promoted, started dating someone new, moved to Columbus for a better job. He sent money every month without fail. And he loved Ethan. I never doubted that. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being the grandmother and became something more. I became Mom. When Ethan was 10, we had what I call the conversation. He'd come home from school quiet, picked at his dinner, my pot roast, which he usually loved. "Gamma," he finally said, "Tyler asked me today why I live with you and not my mom and dad." My heart clenched. We'd talked about this before, in age-appropriate ways, but I could tell something had shifted. "What did you tell him?" I asked gently. "I told him my dad works far away and my mom left when I was a baby." He looked up at me, and Lord, those eyes could break your heart. "But why did she leave, Gamma? Was it because of me?" I got up from my chair and pulled him into my arms right there in the kitchen, holding him like I used to when he was small. "Listen to me, Ethan," I said firmly. "None of that was about you, not one single bit. Your mother, she had her own struggles, things that had nothing to do with how wonderful you are. And your dad loves you more than anything. He works so hard to give you a good life. But I'm here, every single day, and I'm not going anywhere. You understand me?" He nodded against my shoulder, and we stayed like that until the pot roast got cold. The good years rolled on. Middle school, where he joined the basketball team and I became the loudest grandmother in the bleachers. His first school dance, where I helped him pick out a button-down shirt and taught him how to tie a tie. His 14th birthday, where half the neighborhood kids crowded into my backyard for a cookout. Claire's kids, my other grandchildren, were part of it all. Sunday dinners where the house was full of noise and laughter, the kind of chaos I'd once dreamed about when I thought about my retirement years. But this story is about what happened 3 months ago, right after Ethan's 15th birthday. I was in the kitchen making my famous apple pie, the one that had won ribbons at the county fair, when the doorbell rang. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Ethan was at basketball practice. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. Jessica, 15 years older, wearing expensive clothes I could never afford, hair styled perfectly, makeup done like she was heading to some important meeting. "Hello, Margaret," she said, like we were old acquaintances running into each other at the grocery store, like she hadn't abandoned her 3-month-old son and broken my boy's heart. I stood there, my hands still dusty with flour, staring at this ghost from our past. "What do you want?" I managed to ask. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I want to see my son. I've gotten my life together, Margaret. I'm sober, I have a good job, I'm engaged to a wonderful man, and I want Ethan back." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Back?" I repeated. "You can't just—" "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she interrupted smoothly. "I have rights, Margaret. I'm his mother. And my fiancé, well, let's just say when Ethan turns 18, there's going to be a significant trust fund. We want him to be part of our family, our real family." That's when I understood. The timing, right after his 15th birthday, the mention of money, of a trust fund. This wasn't about love or redemption or maternal instinct finally kicking in. This was about money and appearances and whatever picture-perfect life she was trying to build. And she wanted to take my boy, my Ethan, who I'd raised through midnight fevers and homework struggles and heartbreaks, and slot him into it like a missing puzzle piece. I looked at this woman, this stranger wearing his mother's face, and something fierce and protective rose up in me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. "Come inside." As she stepped into my home, the home where Ethan had grown up, where every corner held a memory, I knew one thing for certain. This fight was just beginning, and I wasn't about to lose,